Well, welcome back, everybody. We'll reconvene the meeting for the February 2020 Committee on Accreditation. Everybody here? Looks like we are here. So, are we ready for the 1 o'clock? Are people online?
Brandon's
okay.
Checking to see if she's
all right.
She's on, but she can't hear anything from her end right now. But we were all.
I can hear you now.
Yeah, I was say we were not.
Okay, great. There you are. All right. Excellent.
Just Susan. Oh, her. It was Tammy still going to try and make it.
She's going to try.
Okay. Well, item 18 is the report of actions taken by Anaheim Elementary School District to address stipulations. Consultant Guy Roby will introduce the item, and joining her by technology, we have Susan Kelleher-Holtz, the induction curriculum specialist, and hopefully we'll have Tammy Ledesma, the induction director. Anyone need to recuse himself? Seeing none, Ms. Roby, will you please begin?
Thank you. The Anaheim Elementary School District had their visit in the 2018-19 year, and the report found that the accreditation with stipulations was recommended and then confirmed by the COA. At heart of the matter was they had still required monthly meetings that every teacher came to, every teacher received the same information, same professional development, and then they were still using CFAST forms or FACT forms or NTC FAST forms, whichever one it was. And although they had made steps to dwindle it down some, they were still concerned about how many things that were required and how many things were uniform. And so they were quite willing to go down the route, but their first step for them was to bring in their advisory board team. So attached is their 7th year report as required by the COA. And you'll see their step 1 was to go back to their advisory board and say, this is what the state is telling us about individualizing and providing a mentor relationship. And so they decided to, from that point, open it up to everyone. So they held some professional development meetings where mentors and professional development providers, anyone who wanted to provide them input, and they included pictures in their 7th year report that we didn't give to you guys that shows them putting dots on the items of the ILP they thought were worthwhile and worth keeping. So from that, they redesigned it, got the approval of the advisory board, and piloted that in the 2nd semester last year with just 5 folks. And when it came back with such positive from those 5, that they then used that ILP, and everyone is using it this year, and going well is what the report reported. And then the second issue was the monthly meetings. They have changed that paradigm as well. And instead of monthly meetings, they have, I want to say 5 times a year. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, where they have collaboratives that the mentors and candidates come together, and they can either attend individually in person, or they can attend via electronic means. And that way they have individualized support as well. So currently, the new ILP is being utilized by all of their candidates in the induction program. It is the only document that is required, and they can edit, delete, add, and modify that ILP based on their individual needs. They can choose any modification of their ILP based upon their student needs or their specific teaching assignments. And additionally, the monthly meetings no longer exist.
All right, thank you. This is now an opportunity for the institutional representative to briefly comment about the report. Ms. Holtz, any comment you'd like to make?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. First off, I just want to say good afternoon and thank you so very much for all the wonderful feedback that we received from our site visit team. As we reported in January, and now as you have seen, we hit the ground running, but we started with our advisory board, and every single change that we were asked to make, we did, and it has been received so positively, and we really now see that feedback was to make our program even stronger. And so we are so happy to do it and complete it and also use it. And our teachers, I have to say all of their mid-year survey feedback was so positive. They enjoyed the flexibility, the choice, whether they wanted to modify, what they wanted to attend, if they needed more support. And so they just feel that it's even meeting their individual needs more this year. So thank you.
Great to hear. Thank you. This is now an opportunity for the COA members to ask any questions, make any comments you'd like. Member Forbes.
Question. So I found your transitions very interesting, and I was just curious if you've noticed what kind of differences you may have noticed in terms of the attendance at the meetings compared to when they were monthly meetings.
Actually, the attendance has been incredible. Again, it's optional, of course. We did a Google Meets last month, and all 80 of the mentors the 29 mentors and the 51 new teachers all attended. And they were so excited by the format. It was very quick, to the point. So we've had great attendance. However, there are some that choose not to, and that's absolutely fine too. If their needs are met at their weekly meetings, then, it's really, again, their choice. So that's kind of like our motto this year is individual needs and choice.
Right, thank you. Any other member? Okay, this is an action item, and the recommendation is to be changed from accreditation with stipulations to accreditation. Is there a motion to accept the report? Thank you. So moved by Member Martinez. Is there a second? Second by Member Hillis. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Thank you, Ms. Holtz.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Roby, as well. All right, thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, we're looking at item 19 now is a discussion of the draft agreement with Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Preparedness, AAQEP. Director Terry Clark is
not here.
Cheryl, going to do this one?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Hickey.
Yeah, Terry had to be someplace else. Linda, can you hear us? We should have Linda McKee on. They're getting her hooked up in the back.
Yep. Okay.
Great.
I'm on.
There we are.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Linda,
Welcome.
for joining us. So Dr. McKee is the Chief Operating Officer with the AAQEP. We'll just call it that for now. It's the Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Preparation. We, I think, have kind of talked about this a little bit in the past, but just to refresh your memory, there are now 2 accrediting bodies for educator preparation nationally. CAPE, we talked about CAPE this morning, and then AAQEP is the newest one. They are not, they have not approved any institutions in California yet, but we have heard from at least 3 institutions who are interested in pursuing AAQEP accreditation. We've heard from CSU Fullerton, CSU Fresno, and CSU Bakersfield, who are all looking seriously at pursuing AAQEP accreditation. AAQEP was in California, was that 2 weeks ago? I guess 2 weeks ago in Bakersfield, at CSU Bakersfield, that was attended by additional institutions. It was opened up to whoever wanted to attend. I think it was attended by national university. I'm trying to think who else was at this meeting. Linda, Mark may have told you, and I'm trying to rack my brain who was there. There were other institutions other than CSU.
National, yeah, you said national.
National, Fresno State, I believe, was there.
Fresno State was there. Mm-hmm.
And so when these national accrediting bodies want to work, as Terry always says, we're agnostic. National accreditation is voluntary in California. But it's important for us to have an agreement or a protocol for how we work with these accrediting bodies. I know Linda can kind of tell you where they're at in the approval process from the federal perspective. All accrediting bodies have to be approved by CHIA, and I know they are currently going through that process, and you can kind of say something about that. But what we have before you is just a draft that we have been working with Linda McKee and Mark LaSalle Peterson on, what that protocol might look like. We have it just for information and discussion today, and we can bring it back with any of your changes in the future. We also want to, give the institutions who are thinking about this a chance to kind of weigh in on this as well. So, and we will hopefully have something adopted, by the end of the spring, early summer, so that any institutions who want to work with AAQEP can continue to do that. And Terry has joined us. Wonderful. Yeah. Oh, is that right? Okay. So we have Linda McKee on Zoom, although we can't see her. But so, Dr. McKee, is there anything you would like to talk about or to say before we look into the protocol?
I can give you a little bit of an update on CHIA if that's what you'd like, Cheryl. Happy to do that.
Great. That would be
very
great.
brief. Yeah, just a little bit of the history there is that CHIA had closed down accepting any new or in fact any proposals at all. And then they opened July 1 to accept pre-screening. We contacted them and made an appointment and met with them for July 5, started that initial, we're approved for that initial screening, and then have moved into the section of it now where we are submitting our own self-study. That will be in April of this year, 2020. We'll be submitting that. They will be coming to our Accreditation Commission meeting. It is a Zoom meeting, as we normally do. It's a virtual meeting, but they will be attending that in June of 2020. And then they have a couple more meetings where we will be speaking with them, presenting, and giving some responses to any of their questions for approximately a year or so after that, which is their normal pattern. So we are looking at hopefully a positive resolution to this in 2021.
That's wonderful. So I was able to sit in on the meeting at CSU Bakersfield and where they went in depth into their standards. And I was actually surprised at how there are some areas of real close alignment, I think, between their standards and some of our program completion requirements, some of our continuous improvement standards, those kinds of things. And Terry, I don't know if you want to mention it, but I can see areas where an institution may be able to have a data or documentation that meets both the needs than I previously had thought. And Terry, do you want to share anything from that meeting?
So it was a 2-day meeting there, and the second day we looked much more about the types of data that would be submitted, the assessments that AAQEP would be looking for, and we talked more about the process. And the reason we've now developed this draft agreement is because there are the two institutions ready to move forward with AAQEP, and so they're asking us to do this. This is only here for information for you today. If you want us to get feedback, we would actually post it that it's available for people to give feedback. And I do think the two institutions that have committed to wanting to go towards AAQEP would be interested in seeing it and providing feedback. I don't know if any other institutions would be. 21-22 is the first year. It's not 2021, but 21-22, I believe, is the first year that an institution would be moving forward. The AAQEP process is a little bit different in that they have an off-site review like we do. So that's very parallel, like the Common Standards review, and there's a feedback from that, and then the institution gets to provide more information. But like the CAPE process, the team members don't make any decisions about any standards. Their purpose is to confirm evidence, and then the evidence moves to the accrediting body, and the accrediting body reviews everything. It would be like you guys having to read the program review submission, the feedback from program review, the program review addendum, the common standards submission, the common standards feedback, the common standards addendum, and then the team report, and make your decision based on all of that. So those people read a lot. They do read a lot. Another thing that AAQEP has that's a little different than the commission's process is they bring this team of people that are exterior to the state, and they have the institution identify a practitioner, a teacher, an administrator who knows their institution and knows the state. Now, California is a really big state, and I found very few people, except like an associate dean of accreditation, who actually understands how credentials work in California usually. Even a program coordinator knows their programmatic area, but they don't know other areas very well. And so I think because of the fact that the team does not make any decisions on standards, whereas our teams do, they make decisions on all program standards and the 5 common standards, and the fact that the AAQEP process has this local practitioner who's knowledgeable and a friend of the institution, which is very different also from the commission's process, we have written this initial agreement up as to looking at concurrent visits. I think one of the things the institutions are most excited about is this professional learning community that AAQEP is setting up for institutions, that if you're interested in a visit in this semester of whatever year it is, the other institutions that are going for the visit at the same time become an online networked learning community that meets once a month or so. An AAQEP staff member is involved. They have said commission staff can be involved when we have institutions involved. They're also interested in having a learning committee of state people working with them. And so for the institutions that were at the Bakersfield meeting, they were like, whoa, because this would be our, what's the benefit of doing a national accreditation? Because that was one of the big questions. What are we going to get out of this? Instead of, if we're not just doing the commission work, why would we do this? And they said, that would be actually really cool, because AAQEP Standard 2 is all about program completer and their impact in education. Goes beyond our requirements. So it's really post-program. And even in AAQEP Standard 4, which is really looking at the bigger education community, a lot of those things are really, where do we want this profession to go? So it's really kind of engaging and exciting, and it's new. In the AAQEP process, standards 1 and 3 have to have evidence, has to be showed that it's met, has to be very clear in evidence that it is all in place. 2 and 4 is a little more, as we move to the future, we're working with this, we're figuring out how to make it work, and what is our real plan to do this. So you have to have a plan. You can't just not be doing nothing. How are we collecting some data? But we don't have it all figured out for standards 2 and 4. So I think we learned a lot. This is the draft agreement. If you have any suggestions or things that you're worried about in the agreement, we can take notes on that. We, of course, would have it go through the legal division and through the executive director, and then bring it back to you for your agreement if you believe it's been solid, and then we would work with it to get it signed by both agencies.
I think the last thing I'd just say is that both Mark and Linda have been very, very agreeable to working with us on any way that we want to shape this partnership. They seem to be very open to doing that, as long as, you know, the integrity of their system and our system are adhered to. So, yes. So opening it up for any comments or thoughts about the draft agreement.
Member Morrison.
Thanks. I probably should know the answers to this, so excuse my ignorance, but I can see in number 7 where only you would have to be accredited by this body before you could get accredited there. So I guess this is a question about the control of the commission. What would happen if an institution who was accredited loses its accreditation from this body, but was still accredited with AAQEP? Would they be allowed to issue credentials in California?
No, they would not. The only entities they may issue credentials in California are the entities accredited by the commission. But there are separate decisions that are made, and it's unlikely it would be that disparate where this body still accredits them in good standing and the other body, or this body says no and the other body says, oh, you're fine. One of the real purposes also, I think, in one of these sections was we didn't want any institutions that were still in the IIA process to try going that way yet, because they have not established and gotten full approval from the commission as an entity. But no, they can only do credentials if you're accredited by the commission.
Anyone else have any comments or thoughts? Yeah, Member Forbes.
So, having not participated in a joint visit, well, yes, I have actually participated in a joint visit. I don't know how to evaluate number 3, but it seemed like what we heard today was that, at least in some cases, the national body isn't sending enough people or not the right kind of people, or have there been concerns raised about that?
Well, we've never done an AAQEP visit, but I think what you heard this morning about the CAPE visits, in NCAPE, things were so similar that the teams were talking the same language. And even when they were talking NCAPE language, it covered commission language very clearly. There were only 4 sentences that the commission had not covered by NCAPE. This is more disparate, and you actually did adopt the AAQEP alignment matrix earlier, but one of the reasons we're suggesting concurrent is interviews can take place and the commission gets its interviews, and if AAQEP wants to join an interview, it can be at the interview and ask questions. And so each entity is getting the information it needs. If AAQEP has questions, we can help them understand California. But that the actual things would happen kind of side by side rather than one activity taking place for the institution.
Okay, that wasn't completely clear to me.
That's our goal and what we're trying to set up here.
So I guess that I was actually referring to number 4, like the team composition, and making sure that was really sufficient. Thanks.
Cheryl, this is Linda. I can jump in and give a little bit of information about our volunteers also, if that
Sure,
would
please
help.
do that. That'd be great.
All right. So what we do is that we collect information from the institution when they first join, and then we also collect information from our volunteers, who are our peer reviewers. And that's demographic information, characteristics of the institution, and then experience of the reviewers. And then we have a system set in place that is developed by an algorithm. We have a full board kernel at the Pentagon, in fact, to develop this for us. And we match the peer reviewers with and their experience with the institution. And we want to ensure that there's some experience there, that there's some knowledge, and then of course we share it then with the provider, with the institution themselves, so that they can review just for any particular issues that may arise that we don't see in a CV. So we have a system intentionally in place to try and objectively ensure that there is an alignment with the experience and with the knowledge base and the expertise of the peer reviewer and the provider and the programs.
And I guess to clarify this morning's conversation, the individuals that Kate chose were certainly qualified. They were reviewers just like our reviewers. They were, steeped in educator preparation. It was more the processes and what they needed versus what we needed. And it was very, very disjointed. And that's what made it very challenging. But yeah. So thank you, Linda. That's helpful.
Yeah, we will come in using an apprenticeship model so that Mark or I or another senior staff member would be with especially the original visits where we are doing the joint visits, so that we can assure that there is a clean alignment.
Any other questions or need clarification? Is it all making sense? Is it clear? Okay, and this will come back to us, I imagine. Yeah. So it's not okay. Great. Thank you for the information. Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Cheryl.
So this seems like we're on the right track, is what I'm hearing from you.
That seems to be. I mean,
Okay.
unless I'm not reading
Okay.
the pulse of the room.
Sounds good. I think our
Okay.
next step will then be to float this around to other folks, people who are interested in that
Yeah.
process, and see if they have any other, and then we'll bring it back for your approval.
That sounds good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Yes, thank you both.
Thanks,
Thank
Linda.
you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Do you want to move on to item 22, 23, or yeah, or 23, whatever you think might be fit within a half-hour time frame?
Me too.
Okay.
Going in order.
All right. So item 22 is discussion of proposed revisions to the accreditation framework, and Administrator Cheryl Hickey and Aaron Sullivan.
Yeah, Aaron had to take a phone call at the last minute.
No worries.
Just found out today. Yeah, I can certainly do it.
Okay.
So we presented the changes to the framework to the commission at the last commission meeting. We are making these suggestions, one, for two main reasons. The first is because it's been 4 years, and when we put the framework together, we did it before our new processes and procedures. So now that we've had 4 years under our belt of kind of actually doing this new process, there's some things that jump out at us that needs a little bit of cleanup. The second reason we're doing it is because we have really been strongly advised that we should put some of our more of our accreditation documentation in regulations. That gives me heartburn a little bit because regulations are very specific, and as you know, some of our standards are very they're more based on professional judgment, given a set of standards and that kind of thing. So there are some areas where I know it will be a challenge to get things in regulations, such as parts of our standards that might say things like, the program provides extensive opportunities too. We know that comes down to whether a team feels like there are extensive opportunities. But I know the Office of Administrative Law is going to want us to define these things. So nevertheless, what we want to do is put as much in regulations as we can and still preserve the flexibility amongst, our review teams and amongst COA. But a few situations have come up in the past where it's really been clear that some of what we have been relying on in the past few decades, we really need to put some regulatory language around it. So there's really two reasons why we're bringing this to you today. The framework is the purview of the commission and not the COA, but we would like to have your input and be able to make the changes that you see. The commission didn't have a ton of suggestions. They pretty much liked what was here. They had a lot of questions, but they did start talking about diversity and equity and how we ensure that on teams and those kinds of things. That conversation became a broader conversation about the commission and everything it does. And so as part of the strategic plan that the director will be revisiting very soon, she's going to make that part of the commission's overall, in everything we do, kind of keeping in mind diversity and equity and inclusion. But in terms of this, there were really not a lot of comments. So what we do want to know is find out from you, and we can walk through the sections, explaining kind of, we have this chart on page 2 that kind of goes through the various sections and how we made those changes. So we can walk through pieces of that if you'd like. I think that might be the best way to do it, and then maybe take it little by little and see if you, so the first part, the introduction, of course, most of that language, all we did there, it looks like a lot of changes, but what we did was wanting to make this part of the document a little more timeless. Because what it did is referred a lot to the Strengthening and Streamlining Project. And what we did is took that language out because, in a few years from now, 2014 may seem like eons ago, and try to make it just more timeless and just describe the current accreditation system rather than talk about the revision process. So that's most of the changes in the introduction section. Do we want to stop there and see if you have any changes in that section? Sure. So that would be pages, I guess, 6 and 7, 8. Oh, they did want us to rethink the chart a little bit. That's on page 8. There were questions about why performance assessment was outside of outcome measures. So we're kind of thinking about that chart a little bit more, but I don't have an answer for that right now. If anybody feels like designing one, please do so.
Nope. But looking at this, it looks like it's labeled as page 7, but it might be page 9 of the document.
Okay.
Just for clarification, if we're trying to find it.
Oh, okay.
That's how it's coming up on mine.
The chart.
Okay. Yeah, the chart.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the page numbers.
Oh, no worries. Just so we're on the same page.
I'm going to go to the one online if you're looking at it.
Thank you. All right. Thanks. So, Cheryl, you're asking us for our input at this point on just this whole introduction or the chart itself, or just in general, the intro?
In general.
Okay.
If there's any questions or anything you don't want us to delete that we have suggested deleting. Mm-hmm. Okay. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. I like that. I think that at the commission meeting, Commissioner Andrew Wall, who is our AICCU representative, he brought up that very notion about the importance of the continuous improvement and the self-reflection on institutions. So I think you're right there. That was one of his comments. Great. Okay. Well.
Nothing else on intro. Want to go to the next section?
Sure. So let me get back to the chart real quick so I can remember what we. Okay. So section 1 is pretty much easy. We wanted to make sure we reflect what parts of the ed code we're talking about. So it's very, very clear. That, certainly if you have changes to that, but most of that is verbatim out of the ed code. There's, I think, only one little section that is not verbatim.
So you not much liberty for editing.
Right, exactly. Section 2 was about the same thing. Yep, and that was the same thing. Mostly all just added where the references were to the ed code. And then section 3 includes updated and clarified language, particularly for preconditions and common standards and on national or professional standards. The most confusing part of this whole document was on the connection with the national accrediting bodies and the role of national and professional organizations. So that language in both this section and a later section were revised to try to make it clear. And in fact, I think that is another area where the commissioners felt like we were still a little unclear. So we're going to be working on that. That's a later section. But this is really cleanup from moving from, envisioning this system to having implemented it for several years. So any comments on section 3? And if you think of anything after this meeting, I'm happy to take any emails. We can certainly work on that. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I don't know actually. You could just send me it. You send me the email and make sure I don't lose it.
So that's probably the most direct way to send comments to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's probably
Okay.
the best way. Well, it's on my page 16. Let me go to the section that's option 2, the national or professional standards. It was putting all of the onus on the institution to develop the crosswalk between the national professional standards and the commission standards. And in fact, we don't really do it that way. The commission has sort of taken control of doing the crosswalk. We bring those professionals in to do the crosswalk. We're going to be having to do that very soon with the PPS credentials because those have just changed and national standards have recently changed. And so we want to get the most up-to-date crosswalk between those. And it was just oddly stated here, so we are trying to make that a little clearer. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Just a cup. Maybe I'm just tired and I need some coffee. All of a sudden, I'm having that after lunch. But I guess there's a couple of places where I'm not sure what applies to a program and what applies to an institution.
Okay.
In that section. So
that's a good point.
So, for example, as an institution, we might be implementing both option 1 and option 3. Mm-hmm. So is that, like, as an institution, we have programs that are meeting the experimental program standards, mm-hmm. and then other programs that are meeting the California programs.
That's a good point, that you can kind of mix and match these in a way.
As an institution.
Yes, as an institution, right.
As an institution, I couldn't have one program that had national standards and another program that didn't.
You can.
You can.
You can. And that happens fairly routinely, especially with PPS. So school psychology, an institution may be nationally accredited. So we try to work with the institutions using the crosswalk so that, we know, okay, you've met those national standards. They're aligned to California standards, and therefore there's less onerous work to do to demonstrate that. So an institution could have some programs that just are meeting the state standards and others that
and others that are experimental.
Right.
And so in a way that I think that also helps to alleviate the idea that as an institution I could start right at number 2.
Mm-hmm.
No, I have to be approved first.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I have to be a state approved
yes,
institution
absolutely.
First before I can have programs that have any of those options.
That's a great suggestion. I'm going to make a note of that.
Somehow to make that,
mm-hmm.
well, like a diagram or a couple of sentences or something.
I like that. Okay, I will definitely make those changes. Great.
Being sleepy.
Okay, section 4 is section 4 just reflects all of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years since this document was approved by the commission. To revise the initial institutional approval process. So some of it was written right when we started that process. So we've cleaned it up. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to clean it up to, as we've tweaked it, it went back to the commission several times. And so we needed to make sure that these changes reflect what really is happening. I wanted to direct your attention on, I think it's page 17, on the first page of section 4. There's a section in there about community-based organizations and non-governmental organizations. I don't know if you all remember when we had to come up with that process. So we wanted to make sure that the framework covered that. However, we're also getting some questions about whether that is even applicable any longer. So we are doing some research. It's in a section of Ed Code that maybe has gone away with previous federal. So we're having our legal staff actually look at finding out. We don't have anybody who's ever gone through the process. It was one of those areas where the legislature thought it was a good idea, and then nobody came to the party. So, we are researching that. So the next time you see this may be gone. This little section here. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In the way our program approval works in this body. Mm-hmm.
There may be reasons why we can't change it, but I know we talked about having some different language as to what it is the COA does related to program approval. I know we have access to all the documents. Mm-hmm. I honestly do not get to go in and full depth to review those. And because we've gotten caught a few times as a body having an institution come back to us and say, but the COA approved our program. Well, I just don't see what we do as approving a program. And yet that's the language that we're still using in the document, and maybe we're stuck with it.
The language is in Ed Code. Yeah. That's why it's in the document.
So we just can't change it. Because I don't know if maybe nobody ever notices, but I will never make a move to accept a program or second it. Mm-hmm. I will just not have my name in the minutes as having done that, and then have an institution come back and say, well, Riggs did this. She supported it. Well, how can I support something that I had no knowledge of, really? Mm-hmm. What I'm doing is accepting the recommendation of the reviewers. That's all I can do, and it's been so messy when something got slipped through the process that I'll just keep doing what I've been doing. it looks like we just can't change what
Well,
is.
I think the Ed Code section, if you, on section 2, we refer to Ed Code section 44373C2, and that very clearly says if the committee determines that a program meets all applicable standards via, it doesn't say via reviewers, but
I'm sorry, where are you?
section 2, where we talk about the responsibilities of the COA.
Is that?
It's 12 on mine. Let me.
So, okay.
Section 2, sorry. And I don't have the Ed Code right in front of me.
Okay.
But,
All right. Okay, go ahead.
thank you. So number 2 on that page. If the committee determines that a program meets all applicable standards, and what's not in there is as.
I'm still not seeing it yet.
Did you find it? It's the last part of that paragraph.
There it is. Okay.
The committee grants initial approval to the program, and I believe that is language pulled directly from the Ed Code. And I don't have that in front of me. I could look at. So, I think the way you're doing it is what feels comfortable for you, but I think the commission is actually, and the COA is actually granting.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And throughout the day, I've been trying to phrase a motion to accept the team report as outlined on these pages to kind of avoid the situation where you might feel you have to go out on a limb. But you're right, we're accepting the recommendations, or we're making our own recommendations based upon the findings of the team report.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So just like today, we had the update from a program that had responded to this group, not to the IPR reviewers, right? So directly, those suggestions directly came from this.
True.
Right.
So I don't know if would there be any way to capture that? It's not initial provisional approval or anything like that, but
That's what we had talked about, though.
yeah. I don't know if there'd be any way to amend some of that, because all of it is just a plan anyway, right? So it has a shortened time of review to begin with.
Right.
I think the difference between program approval and what we do, what really seems to be the bulk of our work, which is we make the accreditation decision, and that is when it truly is complete. And so I'm completely comfortable with all of that. It's that, especially for those of you who are new, that very beginning part of what we did today, where we're looking at new programs that have applied, and all they've had is a paper review. And then it says we've approved that program.
That's right.
The COA has approved that program.
That's right.
And
That's
what
right.
I'm hearing from Cheryl is that is the way the language has to stay. I don't know if there's a way for us to do what what I heard you say, Bob, is that when we're accepting a team report and their recommendation, we're using that language.
Right.
But in the program approval part, what I recall is we're using the language, the COA approved this program. And I don't know if there's a way for us even just to communicate it to the people who are hearing that, that yes, you basically it's initial approval for you to start this program based upon a paper review.
Definitely.
But it is not full, it's not really fully evaluated until they go through their first site visit. Anyway.
No, I think it's a valid point. Member Forbes?
Well, so what we're really approving is their proposal or their.
Correct.
Right. That's right.
So if we could say, we approve the proposed program or the program design or as proposed. And then the next, we still have an opportunity, though, to give input into that beyond what the BIR has done through the IPR process. But the next review comes before the end of the accreditation cycle, so it doesn't even go all the way through the accreditation cycle, right? Don't they have to come back? They have to come back in 2 years, and so if
it is a initial institution,
not just an initial.
But if it is UCLA and they've been operating for years and they have a brand new program, it goes into the system and we might not see it for another 6 years. That's correct. That they do submit data, Remember, we didn't have that before, so they're submitting annual reports. But, yeah.
So maybe there's something that could be in the wording that what I'm hearing is that we are accepting the proposal, but not necessarily the program. I mean, that seems to be the sticking point. Iris, were you going to say something as well?
Well, I feel like even if we put in there, because when we've had difficulty with an agency who was really confused, because here they finally come up for their visit, and then we're trying to tell them that they're operating a program that is not right in a major way, right? And so then we had nothing in this framework that we could really point to that helped them understand that. You got initial approval for your program to run, but your program is not in compliance with the standards, even though the paper review suggested it was. And so even if there was something here in that language on number 5 related to initial submission of educator preparation programs that said, where it says, considered for approval for the Committee on Accreditation, and there's a follow-up sentence that says something like, full review of the program will occur at the first site visit, or something like that. Because it really is just initial. You know, even though we're not using that language, it really is just initial to get them started, but it's not been, nobody's talked to their candidates, there's not any evaluation data. Right.
Well, there hasn't been any implementation.
Right.
The implementation is reviewed through the accreditation cycle.
Yeah.
All we're
So
doing is
certainly
a proposal.
Right. So is there a way, Cheryl, of doing that without disrupting the education code as far as how the wording has to be?
I think adding another sentence
Yeah.
is actually probably the right thing to do, is to just, because, and I will go back and look at the exact words in that ed code section also, and also talk to our legal staff about this topic. But I think another sentence that refers back to the site visit would be helpful, I think. Confirms, yep.
Yeah, confirms the
Okay,
ability of the agency to continue the program.
great.
So it's basically, it's just the beginning process. Right.
Sure. I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, thank you all.
I don't know that it doesn't change your, that you are approving it, but it does then talk about the rest of the process. So, okay.
Right, as a beginning step.
Right. That's good problem solving. Thank you. 'Cause I'm like, I don't know. Okay, great. So that's that section. Oh, yes, please.
Clarification.
Please.
Again, I can echo Cheryl and plead like afternoon fatigue or something. But would it be possible then, even with this language, for an existing institution to do initial submission of a new program that would never get visited for 6 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's still problematic.
I think I can see what we're saying, especially when we're thinking about 6 years, but also we're talking about an established institution that has a record of approved programs and meeting accreditation. So I think that's a little bit different than the very first initial institutional approval.
And that is the approach for the new initial institutional approval process, is that they need, because it's a new institution that hasn't demonstrated with the commission its a success over time, that we need to take a greater look more quickly. So that's the 2 years into provisional approval before they get full approval. Yeah, and that is the
we
approach.
do have. I'm sorry. Yeah. That we do have like data that's coming in through the ADS between. But it would kind of be. I don't know that we would actually look at it, because we look at what comes before us. But I guess there could be some opportunities to address it before. Well, at least the institution should be addressed annually.
Well, I understand the logic behind your comment. Obviously, that's why this language looks like this. But I think of my own institution and the radical changes in leadership and management and people responsible for programs over 6 years. I mean, I think it's a reality of California public institutions to not be consistent in terms of their ability to implement evidence-based program evaluation even. So again, our goal, I think, as Iris articulated, is to help programs not get caught short 6 years into the game, right? The goal is to make sure they're launched in the right direction. And if they're not, especially with something like intern programs, that we're able to say, whoa, danger, danger. If you made these changes 2 years in, you're not going to find yourself 6 years, in a pickle.
So
which was the rationale behind implementing 2 times of preconditions reviews within that.
Exactly. Yes.
We have a number of things that are due throughout the accreditation cycle that would catch things like changes in leadership, because that was exactly one of the red flags.
Exactly.
That was one of the red flags that we had talked about. And so staff are reviewing those, right?
Absolutely.
And then bring to the attention of.
Yeah.
Well,
and
the staff review
reviews them twice during the cycle. Yeah.
Right. And then the common standards come in. Well, the common standards and the program review come in a year out, which is much earlier than it was in the past. So I think and then the yearly ADS should be some checks that staff could bring to the COA.
And I can tell you that the preconditions review is catching things. I can tell you that. I just had one yesterday where one question led to another question, which then we said, we need to see how you're matching and so we have the list of the candidates, the list of the mentors, and we're seeing right now there's no subject matter match in more than 50% of those. And so it's raising questions for us. So the question then is, we'll follow up, and if we don't see a change, we are bringing it to you all to say, we need a site visit for this team. So there is some review, and the hope was that we'd have enough outcomes measures, and we're still working on that because that's a big question, to flag some issues that may be happening at an institution. So looking at the TPA scores, the rubric level TPA, it's a little harder to do on induction because we don't have that kind of data available. But that's the hope, is that there's something that'll flag in that 6 years so that we're not waiting. That's the intent.
And so I think as a body, the progress that's been made the last couple of years has been moving in the right direction. So if there's something else that comes forward that piques our interest that we feel we need to discuss further and maybe add to the process, I think we certainly have that opportunity to further discussion. Yeah.
Okay, so we will try to come up with a good sentence to add in here, Iris, that will hopefully, would you be willing to review any draft language? Great. Or if anybody has the suggested draft language for that, we are happy to take that. Okay, so we were on 4, which had all of the major changes, and then 5 is just the cycle. This again is mostly cleanup. I need to find my chart here. 5 was mostly updates, just now that we've moved from conception to actual implementation of the strengthening and streamlining process. The Board of Institutional Review, Section 6, we just, again, it looks like a lot of changes, but it's mostly to just clarify the kinds of things that they're asked to do and how we address the Board of Institutional Reviewers. Section 7 is almost a complete rewrite, and it will need to be rewritten again because of Commissioner Wall saying, this is still very murky and confusing. So we're going to take another shot at Section 7. The way it was written was a very strange approach originally, but it had been there for many years, so we hadn't touched it in a while. And then Section 8 also is the only change there primarily is that there was a word in the end that said that we had to get the approval of the president of the University of California and the chancellor of the CSU system in order to change the framework, so we added consultation with the systems rather than the consent of, or whatever the word was that was used there. And that, I can tell you, was pulled from an old Ed Code section, and we never touched it. So that's the only reason why it's there. That Ed Code section doesn't exist any longer. So those are the changes, and we will keep working on this. It'll probably go to the commission. We do plan to put this out after this meeting to the field for a survey to see if there are any comments, and we'll bring it back again probably at not your March meeting, but the one after that, for more discussion.
Sounds good. Thanks, Cheryl. Anything? Yeah, Ms. Reeks.
Iris has a question.
Is that focus site visit new, or is that old language?
Actually, that is new language. Thank you for attending. Do you know what page it's on?
21 on mine.
So there was some language about focus site visits kind of scattered throughout, but it wasn't always talking about the same kind of focus site visit. So what we tried to do was there are some various times when we can do a focus site visit, and we try to put it all in one section. So it's on what page on yours again? So that one's not on 21 on mine. That's what happens when I print. There it is. Right. So we wanted to note that there are different kinds of program focus site visits as a result of either the program review process that says, well, we really need at the site visit to look at this and have more individuals kind of look at that. The second one would be that if we got to an institution and because we don't use all the time, if we go to a CSU and they have 30 programs, we don't bring 30 people. So we may be lacking the expertise. If something pops up at an institution, we need a reading expert, then we might need to go back for a focus site visit there. Or if there's some sort of outcomes data that says, hey, and that's the case that I was just talking about today, where we bring back to you and say, we need to go back to this institution, there's something going on. So there's various scenarios, and we wanted to be able to capture that there's various reasons why we might do a focus site visit. So yes, good eye. That is new language. All right.
All right. Anything else? Okay, that was item 22. We should go back to item number 20. And item 20, looks like we have the folks here from Cal State Sacramento. Great. So item 20 is the accreditation report of the site visit team to California State University, Sacramento. Consultant Bob Locks will present this item, and joining him at the table is team lead Karen Melblom Nishioka. Did I pronounce that correctly? Oh, thanks. All right. Institutional representatives Dean Alexander Sasha Sidorkin, and then also Dr. Pia Wong. Good to see you again, Associate Dean for Research and Engagement. We have one recusal, Member Martinez. Are there others? All right, seeing none, Mr. Locks, will you please begin?
Thank you. December 1st through December 4th of 2019, the 10-member accreditation team met at California State University, Sacramento to give their accreditation, to review their accreditation. The visit went very smoothly with no issues, no major issues. And one of the things that did strike me personally about CSU Sacramento was how they are so integrated in the local educational community and how they actively look for feedback from this community to help construct programs that will benefit the local schools. This personal commitment and concern coming from such a large institution truly surprised me. And now with that, I'll let our team lead, Dr. Karen Melblom Nishioka, give you the results of the visit.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to thank the institution for their preparation, hospitality, and for their prompt responsiveness to the requests and queries of the team both prior to and during the visit. I would also like to thank the members of the team who collaborated to make the process manageable and meaningful. And of course, a big thank you to our CTC liaison, Bob Lux, whose calm, unflappable demeanor set the stage for a great working environment. I think it's important to note that Sac State offers 14 credential educational authorizations, which were represented by a total of 175 combined common and program standards, which when I added it up just blew my mind. It's incredible. After a thorough review of all institutional and programmatic information and materials, documents, and interviews of nearly 800 constituents, the team was unanimous in its recommendation of accreditation. Program standards for all programs offered by CSU Sacramento were met with the exception of Program Standard 5 for the preliminary multiple subject, single subject program standards, which was met with concern. All common standards were met. The concerns related to Program Standard 5 for the preliminary multiple subject, single subject resulted out of awareness related to the EdTPA. The multiple subject, single subject programs have recently transitioned from the PACT assessment system to the EdTPA. Evidence suggests that roles may have shifted with this transition, leaving faculty and candidates a bit uncertain who holds or held the role of TPA coordinator. Further evidence suggested that EdTPA data is not clearly articulated as a source for program improvement. I think it's also important to note that we did look at the data related to student success on the EdTPA, and it was equivalent with the kinds of things that we see in other CSUs. Specifically, interviews with single subject faculty revealed that there is no identified TPA coordinator, or there was no identified coordinator. This was corroborated within the narrative. Interviews with multiple subject faculty uncovered that there is one person who has volunteered for the role and one additional person who supported remediation within the multiple subject program. Current multiple subject candidates were not able to identify a TPA coordinator or a point person. During the site visitation, a TPA coordinator was assigned. Assignments within coursework are specifically aligned to the EdTPA, with faculty articulating, however, that they do not teach to the test.
We now invite the institution representatives to briefly comment about the visit. We remind you, not a time to dispute the team findings, but rather provide any thoughts that you might have regarding the visit itself.
Thank you. I'm not going to dispute one of 175 things. I just want to say that for us it was a meaningful, interesting experience. The preparation for the visit was a construction of one giant mirror through which we can look at ourselves. We've seen things that we didn't know about. So in that sense, that was useful to us. I want to thank the visiting team, who were exceptionally professional and organized in their work. It was very, very sort of peer-based review. So we work with people who are like us, who know what we're doing. In that sense, it was very enriching conversations that we had during the visit and kind of in the breaks of it. So I also want to thank my associate Dean Pia Wong, because it was mostly her effort to coordinate that kind of led to the successful visit. We are very happy with the report. We already almost fixed all the bugs that were identified there. And I also want to thank Pia's husband, who had to hear about that, I guess, for the last 8 months. So Bruce knows more about CDC accreditation than most of the citizens in our state. I think that. Like I said, the process we really appreciate having it. We will have a CSU deans who might provide some feedback. There are still ways to improve some of it, but again, I think the essential part of it is that we have a collaborative relation with the accrediting body. It's not confrontational. I've been to other states where it was not the case. So I feel like here we're being heard and we get good feedback. We work with our colleagues, and in the end, ultimately, it benefits the students and then their students. So I just want to thank and kind of remind ourselves that it's not a bureaucratic exercise. It's sort of our way of improving. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sidorkin. We appreciate your thoughts and insights. Dr. Wong, any comments you'd like to offer?
I don't know if that's true about my husband, but I think he's just as relieved as I am that we made it through the visit successfully. And I do want to thank Bob and Karen and all the members of our large team. They were extremely flexible and adaptable. They had to do Zoom, they had to do face-to-face, they had very, very long days and had to really sort of synthesize a lot of information. And as Dean Storkin said, it was very useful for us. I think that it was reassuring to have a team of colleagues to engage with us around sort of strong points and areas for improvement. And we hit the ground running this semester with sort of more in-depth plans around program assessment and supervisor and mentor support. And I think everybody felt very energized by the kind of reflection that we did and the kind of feedback that we got from the team. So all in all, I remember sitting in those chairs and would just say, I get it now in a way that I didn't always get it before, but it is a very, very productive process. And I think helped to sort of get the faculty and the staff just more engaged, versus one or two people that had a lot riding on it. I think everybody feels like they have energy to kind of tackle some of our areas for improvement. So, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Wong. Yeah, you definitely have insights on all the different sides of this. Thanks so much. All right, committee members, this is our opportunity to ask any questions, make any comments. Member Riggs.
Well, congratulations on your report. And I just also want to say you're a big institution with lots of programs, and I see 800 interviews. And I see 337 candidates interviewed and 94, so basically 100 completers interviewed. We still don't know if that's adequate related to how many programs you have, because it's not broken down by that, but it shows a lot of effort on your part, especially related to the completers, to try to get that many completers being interviewed. So congratulations on that too.
I just wanted to make one comment on that because it was something that we really did fret about. And because of the timing, the Sunday was not a day that we could utilize. So I think we actually would have had more completers interviewed if we could have actually had them come on a day when they didn't have to be at work. So it's just I think it's already probably part of revised, protocols, but I think just paying attention, we could have paid attention to sort of what that Sunday was. It was the last day of the Thanksgiving week. So I think that in the future, I would just say institutions stay away from those dates and then be careful not to offer them up.
Member Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, congratulations. You both mentioned the value of the kind of pre-visit preparation, and so I just wondered if you could share a little bit about how you engineered experiences for the very complex program that you have. How did you capitalize on the need to assemble all this evidence as a way to reflect? Because you both said reflection through that process. What are some of the things you did that you felt were effective in that process?
Well, so the wisdom of our system is that it's cyclical. So after our last accreditation visit, there were some very important structural pieces that weren't in place at Sac State, and those got put into place. And I think so all of our program coordinators, and they're across 3 colleges, the credential program, so they all meet once a month, and we meet whether there's an accreditation, document to prepare or not. So right now, for example, we're sort of trying to translate our vision into some projects. We're working on data collection, which will be a part of program assessment towards the end of the semester. So we have it's a standing group that gets together monthly, and they present in each other's classes. So I think with that structure in place, then it was just kind of like any good, class, like, okay, we have a thing due. It's called a program review. Here are the elements, and then we just sort of did work every month and in between, and we had a lot of support from our dean and also from our provost to do some full accreditation days in the summer where people would work on the more extensive pieces, and then we had a lot of support from our technology staff around building the matrices. But I think just good backwards planning. I think all the deliverables are very clearly laid out, and I think you just have to kind of be detail oriented and work backwards from what's due and give people enough time. And then I would also like to, compliment Karen and Bob. They were clear with their direction leading up to the site visit about what was needed, but very careful, I noted, not to overwhelm us at the same time when we were trying to get all the pieces into place. And I know that was that was the firm guiding hand of Karen in particular. So that's kind of how we organized it.
Is that like the Oscars are being played off stage? Sorry. Any other committee member wish to make a comment or ask any questions? If not, let me draw your attention back to page 3 of the team report, in which there's a recommendation of accreditation. And so is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the team findings? So moved by Committee Member Forbes. Is there a second? Second by Committee Member Tchaikovsky. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? Yes. And by the sound of the music, the motion carries. Thank you so much. So congratulations. Thank you, Dr. Sidorkin. Thank you, Dr. Wong. Pia, good to see you again. Thank you, Dr. Melblom Nishioka, and thank you, Mr. Laux. Before Pia leaves, I have to thank her for turning me on to Gunther's Ice Cream here in Sacramento. If you haven't been there, you got to go. Right. Speaking of early, we are early for number 21. Oh, great. All right, we'll invite the team from University of Phoenix to the table. And item 21 is the accreditation report of the site visit team to the University of Phoenix. Administrator Aaron Sullivan will present this action item.
Thank you.
And as they get settled, we'll see at the table. Team lead is Brad Damon. Brad, there you are. Thank you. I'm sorry. And then we also have institutional representatives, Dr. Pamela, is it Roachman or Rogaman? Rogaman, all right. Thank you, Dean, College of Education. We have Dr. Alexandra Escobar, Director of Programmatic Accreditation and Regulatory Compliance. Thank you. Welcome. And also we have Julia Taylor, Program Chair, College of Education. Thank you. And then we also have some joining us by technology. Is that correct? Okay. We have Ashley Bartley, Associate Dean, College of Education. If you can hear us, just say hi, hello, hey. Is Ashley there?
Hello.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks. Dr. Connie Lorthridge, Senior Manager, Programmatic Accreditation and Regulatory Compliance.
Hello.
Thank you. Shelley Hodges, Senior Director, College Operations.
Hello.
Hello. And then we have Sonia LeBron, Senior Manager of Placement Services, Center for Placement and Field Experience.
Hello.
Great. Thank you for all being here. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Sullivan, would you please begin?
Yes, thank you. So this site visit occurred early in February 2nd through 5th. So I would like to start by commending the team and also the institution and everybody for being very focused on getting this report turned around in time for us to bring it to you today, because it was a pretty tight timeline, but everybody worked very hard. So congratulations on that. University of Phoenix, as you know, has some satellite campuses here in California, so we were able to hold the site visit at their satellite campus at Sacramento. So we were local, which was nice. I just would like to point out some characteristics of the site visit that were a little unique to the site visit. It was an entirely virtual site visit with very few exceptions. This team, and in fact most of the team members who are also joining us via Zoom were here physically, but for the most part everything was done virtually. And it was coordinated very, very well. Each of the team members had their own individual sort of classroom at the campus, where they just went back to that classroom each time. They had a Zoom account that was set up. They logged in and they conducted their interviews that way. So it was very well coordinated by the institution. But you know, this kind of virtual site visit is still a little bit new for us. So you know, there's always that feeling of uncertainty, but it came off really, really well. Also, since this was mentioned at the end of the last report, we were not aware until very too close to the site visit to do anything about it, that this site visit started on Super Bowl Sunday. So let me just put on a different hat real quick, if they will let me. So, now that site visits are occurring more year round, there are just some things that had not kind of occurred to us, right? So I got feedback from PIA early on. We made sure to not schedule any site visits for the coming year that happen just after the Thanksgiving holiday. We recognized that we had a couple of institutions who had chosen next spring. The Super Bowl Sunday starts for their site visits, and we reached out to them and asked them if they would like to reschedule, and they have. So it's a learning process, but in this particular case, it kind of occurred to us a little bit too late. So with that said, what we did need to do was start the site visit earlier. So most of the team came in on Saturday night, with the exception of a couple of us who live local, and we started the site visit at 8:30 on Sunday morning. Because we pretty much couldn't get any interviews scheduled after 3 or 3:30, after kickoff. And I know that the institutional representatives, they worked very hard, and they were very concerned about what if we don't have enough folks, which seems like it's kind of been a theme for us a little bit today. And they brought us basically a table at the start of our site visit that showed all of the efforts that they had made to get interviewees to come to these interviews, because I think they were very nervous. And then with our very first interview of current candidates, about over 30 people showed up to that interview. So I will commend them also for not letting out a great big whoop out in the hallway and high-fiving each other, because I know there was a high level of nervousness about that. Another sort of thing that was unique to this site visit is University of Phoenix launched a new version of their multiple and single subject program, which I think you kind of are aware of from reading the report, in April prior to their site visit. So it's been about a year now, but not quite. And in talking about that and kind of looking at that, it occurred to us that there were enough things about this version 8 that were unique from version 7 that we needed to bring another reviewer. So in the fall, we added another reviewer who just came to look at version 8. And so your report is kind of reflects that as well. So they've got a version 7 that they're phasing out along with Cal TPA, and then their version 8 folks that they're phasing in, and those will be Ed TPA people. I did work closely with University of Phoenix for the year leading up to their site visit. We had monthly meetings. I would just really like to mention their level of coordination and focus on details. They came sometimes at these monthly meetings with some questions about standards that made it clear to me that they were focusing and really doing some deep dives on standards language and trying to really make sure that they were understanding what was expected of them, and ensuring that that was happening in their programs. And I just want to kind of commend them for that. And then finally, they continued to maintain throughout the visit just a very positive can-do attitude. The mid-visit report, which is not uncommon, still had some areas of concern, some things the team were looking for, and they took it in stride. They thanked us for the feedback, and then went back to what I came to call their war room, and just got to work and got us amazing pieces of information, additional interviews, and things that the team really needed. So, the site visit really ran like a well-oiled machine, and I think the team would agree with that. And with that, I will let Brad talk about the team's findings.
Okay. All right. Well, I would like to echo everything that Erin just said, and I'd like to also extend my thanks to the institution for their incredible responsiveness, their candor during the visit. I'd also like to thank our accreditation team, who you heard really worked tirelessly They came in the night before, and these were long days. Many people starting at 7 a.m., finishing 11 p.m. at night, most of the days of the visit. So it was everyone really put forth great effort to ensure that we really did a thorough job in looking at University of Phoenix. I'd like to say, too, beginning on Super Bowl Sunday, it is really extraordinary. We were able to interview 206 different stakeholders through this process, which was impressive. And as you heard, we did use Zoom, and I think that was actually a real asset, given the fact that it was a kind of a Super Bowl weekend. A lot of people had plans. It actually worked really, really well. So I think there's definitely some acknowledgement for the extraordinary job that University of Phoenix did with that. So you've read the report, and I'd like to give you some glimpse into some of the behind-the-scenes discussion from the team room that supports how we arrived at a recommendation, our unanimous recommendation for accreditation, how it is that we found all common standards were met, how it is that we found all single subject, multiple subject standards were met, and how we found that all CTEL program standards were met, with the exception of one met with concerns, which was Program Standard 1, Program Philosophy, Design, and Coordination, which really came down to an explicit statement of program philosophy that clearly articulated the instructional needs of English language learners. We just wanted to see that spelled out more clearly to support that standard. Other than that, everything was met, and the team was completely unanimous on it. And one of the things that really stood out to us during this visit, because we all kind of had to wrap our heads around University of Phoenix, we're doing these virtual meetings. They're spread out all over the state of California. How is it that they're able to really gather information and know what's going on in these programs in such a large distributed system across the state of California? And they really did a wonderful job of making that clear. They have incredible systems in place. And so one of the things that really stood out to us, they're gathering information in every single course. There's opportunities for students to provide feedback, not just about their instructors, but about the supports that they receive from their advisors, from credential staff. Those systems are held in a centralized database, so they're acted upon locally, and they're also aggregated at the headquarters, where they are looking for patterns. And the team uses that particular, it's a GGS system, I believe is what they call it, a global governance system, which is used, that is actually where advisors are tracking comments, and then they have the end of course surveys, which students are providing. And then in addition to this, they have this rapid design cycle that they use, which comes from the leadership at University of Phoenix, where they'll identify a theme or something that needs to be worked on, and then we'll bring all their top executives together, and they will get after something for continuous improvement, whatever it is that's emerging. So that was really impressive. We got an opportunity during the visit to see a presentation of what they had turned out through one of those rapid design cycles, and it really gave the team a lot of comfort in their ability to show continuous improvement. It was a great opportunity for us to see how those channels of communication really work, how it plays out. And what's interesting is, although the team is, there's different groups. You have the education department, you have the advising staff, you have accreditation units. They all sit in close proximity together at the headquarters. And so they're all getting this information that's kind of aggregated up, and then they all come together at the headquarters, and they have their communication channels, which are all very well structured and very well designed to ensure that communication flow. So that was really impressive. And I think that was perhaps one of the substantial strengths that we really saw, was not just the systems, but the group of leadership that they have and the teamwork that they have to kind of really get after all of those things. So that really is kind of just a bit. I don't want to prolong this any longer than I have to. I think I'll stop, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Damon.
Thank you.
This is now an opportunity for the institutional representatives to briefly comment about the visit. We remind you it's not a time to dispute the findings, but provide any thoughts you might have about the visit itself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Pam Rogeman again, and it is a pleasure to be here. And lest you worry, a couple of us got to see the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, so we made it there. What I would just like to let this whole panel know is the amount of gratitude that our entire institution has for this process. It was an amazing opportunity to really, as Erin said, dig deep and to take a look at what we're doing well and what we would like to do even better. I have to tell you, when we left, I said to Erin, not every consultant can be this good. And she goes, oh no, there's nothing special about me. We're all this good. But I do want all of you in this room to understand how helpful and responsive and calm and creative Erin was for the past year. Literally, I don't think we ever waited more than 24 hours to get an answer back. And, you know, when there's so much writing on this and it's so important to us, that is really such a comfort. And so she was just a joy to work with. So I just want to extend a formal thank you from all of us to Erin. In addition to that, the team worked so hard. Our evaluation team, it was really wonderful, their demeanor that they had with all the folks that they interviewed at our institution. You know, our folks, of course, wanted to look good, so they were nervous. And everybody on his entire team, and I'm sure Brad established this tone, but just really set everybody at ease and said, we just want to have a conversation and have you tell us how we do things. And so that led to some really great discussions. Brad was actually super helpful at the 11th hour when we did realize that it was the Super Bowl, and helped us come up with some creative ideas and really set the tone to allow his team to be flexible. And so for a couple of groups, we would split up that and do some of the interviews on Sunday and then some of them on Monday. What I just want to say is, the best thing that you can do as a leader of a team is allow all of those team members to be able to talk about what they're so proud that they do, and also to let them shine. And because this process is so complete and so comprehensive, I mean, that's why we have, 25 people here and on the phone, because everybody wanted to be prepared to answer a question if you had it about how they contributed. So I just really want to extend that gratitude. We are going to be we're going to make better teachers in the state of California because of this process.
Thank you very much for your comments. We do appreciate that. It's nice to hear those comments, both from our side of things, to know that the work that the whole committee is doing at the commission here is being productive, that you're finding good value from it. Thanks for the feedback. Any other institutional representative, either in person or via technology, wish to make a comment?
Erin, and Brad, it's just with the deepest of gratitude that I want to thank you for. You don't even know the depth of your probing questions and your ability to listen deeply every time we met with you was just showing us what a collegial process this was. Erin, your patience with our many questions. Thank you. Brad and Erin both. There were many iterations of this schedule working around Super Bowl Sunday, and then the team's flexibility to come in early. It was incredible. And Brad's creativity 5,001 million times as we looked over the schedule again. It was reassuring that we were collaborating together in a team, hoping for success. And Erin, the truth is, when I helped the reviewer open up that one Zoom meeting, when you were standing over my shoulder, and there they were, 31 out of 32 students who RSVP'd, and we were praying for 50%. We kind of did high five when you weren't around. So, and Brad, the depth of the questions that you asked us, and at the midterm report, maybe when our eyes were like, okay, deep breath, you were so skilled in helping us look at what we did well and to really dig deep in the war room, so dubbed as Erin, which also allowed our team to have this really beautiful collaborative synergy that was all about how do we produce great teachers to impact our kids, and the conversations we had and the buzz we've had afterwards. It's exactly what you want this process to be, no matter what was found. So thank you for the opportunity. It's amazing.
Thank you for the comments. All aboard the Aaron Sullivan fan train. We've known Aaron for a little while, and we definitely concur with what you say. Any other institutional representative wish to make a comment?
Yes, Alexandra Escobar, and I'd like to echo the gratitude that my colleagues have shared. And since we are quick and nimble, that one finding that came up, we already have a meeting scheduled in March with our CTEL lead faculty and additional CTEL faculty that are working in their communities with English language learners to really look deeply at that finding on how we are going to establish that program philosophy and purpose statement and ensure that it's being guided by the ELA and ELD California frameworks, the CTEL standard and KSAs, and the College of Education's conceptual framework. So I did want to be able to share that with all of you, that we are starting that work in March. And once again, thank you for this process.
Great. Thank you for your comments. Any of our technology, or representatives on technology wish to make a comment? All right, hearing none, this is an opportunity now for the committee members to make any comments or questions. And I'd first like to say I'm just blown away that in 19 days, for the beginning of the process to get to this point is really quite remarkable, especially with a program that large and doing it via technology. The organization from the university must have been unbelievable. To be able to coordinate all that and pull it off is quite remarkable. So congratulations for that, definitely. And Brad, nice work. And Aaron, of course. All right, any committee member? Member Tchaikovsky.
Well, congratulations. And just a couple of comments I wanted to make. First of all, I'm super interested in learning more about the virtual means that you use for collaboration. I think it's 2020, and we've all got to learn how to do what you're doing. Even if we're brick and mortar institutions still, and that's like our dominant mode of interaction. I mean, these processes for attacking a problem, like you said, jumping on something and just problem solving in this virtual way holds so much promise for all of us who really want diverse voices to be heard that are sometimes not heard as loudly as they should be. So, when we talk about exemplary practices, let's investigate what you guys are doing and try to appropriate that in more programs. And then I just had a question/suggestion. I noticed there were 7 completers who participated in the interviews, and that's a really small number compared to the legions who were able to participate, who are currently enrolled. So I guess my question for you is, do you track what happens to your people after they complete your program? Because obviously what you're doing is great for the people who are there. Do you have a process in place to keep in touch with your graduates as they complete induction? Do you have any way to, measure their feedback and rating on your program, once they're out there in the field and they're actually putting it to work? I think that might be kind of interesting for you guys to track that.
That's a great question, and it is something that we have something in place, and there's room to make it even better. One of the things that we do is we do conduct an employer survey, so that's not our candidates, but the employers of our candidates to get their feedback. We also have an institutional-wide alumni survey that's delivered every 2 years. We also look very carefully at the CTC survey. Actually, at our last advisory board, we had the advisory board members look at the completer data and provide us feedback. So that's what we have in place, but we know that there's ways to do that even better and build on that.
Thank you. Member Briggs.
I have a question, and it's really out of curiosity related to the standards related to supervision, and there were changes made, and we're all trying to respond to those. And I noticed that the report says that you have 100 hours of supervised early field. And I think that there's some confusion in the field, perhaps from my own perspective. I'm not speaking officially, just about is early field supervised or not. And then I noticed that there was a statement that said reviewers found the documentation and interviews inconsistently describe the requirements of those 100 hours of field. And I wondered, does does the response to the new standard relate to some of what happened there? What happened there with the confusion, and how do you define supervised field versus student teaching?
I can start us off, and then Julie will be able to talk about some things that we have in the works for future improvement. So right now with our 100 hours, there's about 70% that are prescribed in the coursework that are specifically outlined, and we have a matrix for our candidates in their California Future Education Handbook that spells that out. There are 100 hours total that are required. So approximately 30 hours, they're guided with the host teacher, but they're not specifically tied to an assignment. So that was the confusion. That being said, we are working on enhancing our clinical experience model, and I'll hand it over to Julie to talk about.
So we have a vision, and we've been working on something that the working title is Guided Inquiry Clinical Experience, a Pathway, I'm going to just read it, toward effective teaching and engaged student learning. And so to better supervise our candidates, our vision, just like structurally, is to kind of have a 3-phase process that integrates coursework, Socratic questioning, working deeply with our host teacher, beginning with phase 1, which is setting the foundation, and it's all, of course, deeply looking at the TPEs in a scaffolded developmental approach, and then moving into meeting the needs of all students in your classroom, and then into a phase we're calling honing our practice. And within this, the reason it's guided has to do with the faculty member, their supervision through coursework, video clips, etc., so that they can give direct feedback is in the vision. And then the work we hope to do with our hosting teachers and training them is the more inquiry portion. So the students will have assignments specifically that they do, but we're looking at sort of four phases of inquiry, which are observation, conversation, experimentation, and then creation. So within there will be a menu of activities in each of those areas to personalize the students' growth, scaffolding, and playing around and messing around with the TPEs. So, observation, of course, step 1. How do we really help our students learn to observe in a classroom? How do they really observe our students learning? How do they know that? Or in the inquiry portion, maybe they'll choose experimentation, and that's more the teaching practices. And the hosting teacher is there supervising them and guiding them during this part. Developmentally, what are you ready to do in each of these categories with this menu of ideas? So that's kind of in a nutshell how we're envisioning supervision from the faculty level, really using the hosting teacher, and then, of course, the self-reflection piece that happens with everything they do. Is that answer?
Great, thank you. Member Forbes. No.
So if that is very helpful. I think my remaining question is, in the early fieldwork piece, the supervision isn't necessarily a university supervisor going out. It's through coursework and also the host teacher. Is that what I'm understanding?
And the faculty member, yes.
So again, congratulations on this great report. I also had a curiosity and a wondering about on page 10, it says that, of the report, says that district-employed supervisors voiced concern about the adequate preparation of candidates prior to student teaching. And then the team found, however, that the candidates, the completer surveys suggested that the completers rated the courses highly. But it still seems like there might be a disconnect between what the supervising teachers, the master teachers, were expecting and the preparation of the students, which, kind of relates, I think, to what Member Riggs was talking about in terms of making sure those expectations are aligned. And so I was just curious about if you've embedded some of that knowledge that you just talked about developing with the candidates into the training for your cooperating teachers. Because that 10 hours of training, I don't know if that applies to the early field work or what you've been thinking about in terms of working with your field-based supervisors so that they also are aware of the expectations.
So that's a really important question, and that is a part of, remember, this is a vision for doing a much better job guiding and then also making it very personalized experience. And yes, we will have to do some, training of the hosting teachers and guiding them. I don't want to take up a boatload of their time, but this will require, detailed directions and us working with our district partners, to look at field experience in a different way and their supervisory and, their formative feedback right away with our students, which we think will help bring them along. We're developing a set of key questions, guiding questions, essential questions around every element of the TPEs, which will play into it. So I think we're, gelling and aware of your point, and I'm excited about our vision.
Thank you, because that 10 hours of training for the supervising teachers is also something that the field is embracing as something that's changed over the last few years.
Which we do with, our district employed supervisors working with our student teachers. And hopefully as time goes on, many teachers who love to work with student teachers, including those hosting teachers early on, will have gone through that. And of course it will be an opportunity. We ask them, here's your, the requirement and whatnot. And it's being extremely well received, at least at our institution, and excitement, and also excitement for the 2-hour part that we do. We have done some self-paced video things on a little bit different topics, and they seem to be really well received. So we thank you for making that a requirement. It's exciting. So.
All right, thank you. Any other last comments or questions? Okay, this is an action item, so I'd like to draw everybody's attention back to page 2 of the findings of the report. And on page 2 and 3, you see the recommendation. The recommendation is for accreditation. So is there a motion to accept the team's findings? So moved by Committee Member Crecia. Is there a second? Second by Committee Member Morrison. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Thank you, Dr. Rogman, all the representatives from UOP, and also Dr. Damon and Ms. Sullivan. Thank you both. All right. Thank you all. Looking at our agenda, item 22 we have gone through, so we're now at item 23, the discussion of site visit survey instruments. Cheryl, are we okay for that?
And I just have a brief introduction to this. You all asked to see the actual questions that we asked for the survey instruments for after a site visit. And so because of ADA, I wasn't able to, present it the way it's presented to the team members through SurveyMonkey. So we just put the questions in here. And in many of these cases, it's a, agreed, disagree, a 5-point scale or that kind of thing, or where it was important, I put where the responses are. But basically, these are the questions, and I'm happy to take any suggestions you have for next year's instruments. We currently do after each accreditation visits, and sometimes it's the last day of the visit, sometimes it's a week or two later, and then we try to do some follow-up when we can. But we survey the institutional personnel, the team leads, the team members, each one of them, and then the consultant. And we haven't published the findings or anything, but we do look at them every year and try to make some adjustments to training consultants. If we have, occasionally we'll have a problematic reviewer that we will either remove from our pool of reviewers or just, have to use that person on a very specific kind of site visit or whatever. But anyways, these are the questions, and you had asked for this specifically, so we're opening it up to your comments, questions.
Practice what you preach, where you keep reviewing, right? Excellent. And what is if they want to make some comments and suggestions, they can send that to you. I'm just looking at with the number of questions that are here. Yeah. What's the deadline to do that?
Well, we're going to use these through this year because we're going to finish. So
Sure.
Probably in the next month or two would be good.
Okay. All right, any initial comments or thoughts? Yeah. Member Tchaikovsky.
So I noticed that the turnaround time's pretty fast. We never responded to these questions after our site visit. I think we just missed it or something like that. They were never put out to our team. No.
Okay.
So we didn't receive them, and so that makes me think, what's the system for verifying that in fact feedback is collected from everybody, and then perhaps more importantly, like, is there I think we talked about this a little bit at our last meeting, like, how does this tool fit into the larger framework of internal kind of evaluation of that process? What is the role of these surveys or these data? How do they complement other forms of data, to inform next steps by the COA and, consultants and other people?
Right. Erin, you had your hand up.
Just on the first part of your question, in terms of timeliness, typically it's not until the final report in front of the COA that the surveys are sent out, so that the institution and like the team, because the team lead gets one, we like to close out the process, and this is really the final piece of the process. So while you might send the surveys to the team members, typically the team lead and the institution aren't sent the surveys till after the COA meeting.
Well, then it shouldn't say here that the SurveyMonkey questionnaire is on the last day of the visit or within a week of the visit.
Yeah. So I think that is probably an area for improvement for us, because each one of the consultants kind of does it their own way. We do look at it towards, 3/4 of the way. I look at it 3/4 of the way through the season to say, oh, we haven't heard anything from this institution. I know they had a visit. So I'll contact the consultant. Hey, please send it. If you haven't done so already, please send it. We can definitely make that a more standardized, regular kind of thing. But it has been more ad hoc than it should be. Each consultant kind of doing it on their own. I don't like to send it on the last day of the visit because I think that people need a few days of reflection at least. So I usually send it a week later is what I do with my team and the institution. And then I will go back in and make sure, okay, I've only gotten, one response. So, little nudge. So, but we can be much more systematic about making sure everybody responds for sure. I think that's an area.
It also makes me think that if there's, seeing the questions I think is really interesting. And maybe in this process, like I'm thinking like in the case of like Gay, if she sends out the surveys to people that she's been in contact with, but she doesn't hear back from them, then maybe I can ask them. And maybe if there's something in it for me, because I'm going to get some data about, I don't know, how my colleagues are perceiving this process or something that's going to help me make my program better, then, maybe I could get more feedback that's actually useful. I guess the question is, if it's not put out at the visit, then how do we know that that everybody has the contact information that they need to ensure that the right people get the survey? It seems like it's pretty loose right now in terms of who gets it.
I got lost somewhere in your comments because the information is primarily for us to think about the accreditation technical assistance for us, for our own staff, what kind of assistance do you need? Where have the problems been? If we're getting feedback from institutions that something didn't go very well at an institution and we're seeing it across a couple of institutions, it's not an isolated case. Maybe we need some training, whatever it is. But we do not share this data with the institutions at all. This stays here. And in fact, the consultant one is only reviewed by myself and Terry and Aaron. Well, Aaron is new to this process, but yeah, we don't share that at all.
Because when I see when I see institution, that's not clear to me exactly who would do that? I mean, I guess it's the person responsible for
right. Like, so for
coordinating
example,
the visit.
Right. So for example, Chapman, I would send it to Dr. Hall and Dr. Grogan, two people who were here today. So it's usually the dean and the accreditation coordinator, or the program director, whoever was the main contact people for you at the site visit. We don't send it to the entire institution or the entire unit.
And for clarification regarding how we're checked, Cheryl does that checking, and she ensures that every one of us, and then if someone hasn't done it, Cheryl lets us know. We go back to them and say, perhaps you didn't get this. Could you please follow through? And so we try to follow up as much as we can. We can't make them do it, but we do try our best to get them to do it because it's helpful to us. So we are checked by Cheryl. It's not just left up to each consultant to make sure that if we have a bad site visit, we just don't send them out. If there's a difficult one, we want to know why that occurred. And so Cheryl tracks us all.
And so
could be much more systematic about it.
Well, yeah, and I wasn't asking the question to imply that, people are asleep at the wheel or something like that. But, and then like accreditation season, just for my understanding, does that mean the end of the calendar year? Help me. Because I see that language.
It's really the site visit season. So, October through the first week in May, essentially. Mm-hmm.
I did read through these questions, and I may have missed it, but the one place where I know that the institution gets a chance to get feedback about the team leader and also team members. This is something that I guess I've heard, and especially since we've gone doing the efficiency and streamlining aspect and trying to keep costs down. And even in the past, it probably happened when people get sick or someone dies or whatever, and a team member can't come to the visit. But when you think about a very small, visit with one program versus 14 or 20 programs, and then sometimes, I wonder about the differences in how well the team can really identify everything when you've got 20 programs and you've got some team members that are doing more than one program, which sometimes happens. And so I have heard that sometimes the institution isn't concerned about what was found, they're concerned about what was not found because of that happening. And then you think about just the difference between being a small program with this huge, microscope on you, and then you have 18, 20 programs, and some of those programs don't get enough of a microscope to really give them what perhaps they know is an issue for themselves, but then they say, oh, wow, we got through that, and no one realized we had a weakness there or a need there. So could there be a question about that related to, do you feel that your program reviewer had enough time or something like that to do a thorough job of getting to know your program?
Okay.
Something like that. I don't.
Or an accurate reflection of, okay, let me think about that. Those are actually, I worry about the same exact thing. I worry about what we're missing. So just an example, we recently adopted new TPEs for the reading and literacy area. And I wonder, I've been thinking out loud, I'm worried about, are we looking at them deep enough? Are we looking at them, and so, one of the things I want to do over the next couple of weeks is pull the team together to say, okay, let's think about this. And if we add another set of course matrices and all that, is it now just, are we really getting what we need? And so it's I worry about that same thing. What are we missing? So I think those are good questions. Somehow we'll add that. Mm-hmm.
Robert Tchaikovsky.
Well, and related to that, most of these questions really seem to be about what happens over those 2 days. But a lot of people here, and I would echo that, in my own experience, found the assembling of evidence and the coaching we received in that process to be super useful part of the accreditation cycle, right? So maybe aligned with what Iris was saying, were the people who came to visit really familiar with the website? Or were there things that they didn't know? Because that would help us like coach people in the future to front load certain things, or we could clarify what those deliverables, as Pia called them, or like artifacts, that we expect to be front and center are. Because making your argument, I mean, it sounds simple, right? You just assemble all these things in one place. But I've studied enough, rhetoric that there's all kinds of ways you can assemble your stuff to make an argument about your program. So, yeah, like what do is there a question that you wish they'd asked, or is there something that you wish they'd followed up on, or is there something you wish you'd had a chance to show them that you didn't get to? I think it's as important to acknowledge the positive aspects of a program than it is to fixate on the conditions or stipulations or other, shortcomings.
Yeah, Cheryl?
Well, and I think there are some questions like that, but maybe, because I just read one, right, and she said that, was what do you wish that they would have seen, or something like that. But maybe it's just partly also in the way that it looks here, as opposed to the SurveyMonkey, where you might have things that were in banks or chunks, like before the visit, during the visit, after the visit.
Yeah.
Right, and then... some of the issues that I guess I'm curious too about some of the issues that we've talked about today and that we've seen coming up was, what are the comments on the interview process? What are the comments on getting enough respondents, or some of the things that we've seen in this group in the new accreditation process that we could get some feedback on? Because I think a lot of this seems to be, and understandably so, formative and evaluative feedback for the consultants, for the staff, right? But some of it, I think what we're hearing is people would like to have some feedback on the process, right?
Can I respond to that? Yeah. As a consultant, I often share with my institution feedback that not of a specific other institution, but I just say, in recent visits, here are some of the concerns that have arisen. Here are some of the items we've identified that could be stronger, and here are some things that might help you as an institution. So I don't know. I think that might be common, but I couldn't say. But I can tell you that is something that.
And so if it were captured perhaps a little more systematically, and maybe it is, I just can't tell, by the institution, that could also help inform the consultants.
Yeah, it would. Probably would. But I wouldn't want your institution to think, oh dear, everyone's going to know what I said. We would have to be careful and just be aware of making sure that we were protecting those who did the survey, because it's.
Yeah. And as a team,
we want them to be really honest.
That's right.
And
as a team member, I want to take the survey, not on the last day of the visit, but not more than like maybe the next week. Because you've already moved on, you've already forgotten about it. But, I think there is something to be gained by waiting for the institution to have gone all the way through the process. Because a lot happens after the visit up until today, when the report is read out.
Member Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, just to add on something Cheryl said, I think that would be really useful in the spirit of like triangulating data. If we could organize the constructs of these questions in parallel fashion, so that, I know there are different surveys for different people, but for example, if there's a question, to take Cheryl's example, about, preparing for the visit, like that's one section in every survey, and there's similar questions given to each person who contributed to this, then you and people here could get some sense of whether it's just some wacko program manager who's like, or if it's actually, a sense of insecurity that was kind of across the team. Because that would inform processes and, more systematic changes to practice.
Right. Member Morrison.
In order to do that, though, you would have to be sending the survey to more than two people. If routinely it only goes to the people who are directly involved, the two people who sit up here, to get what you're getting at.
that they knew what was on the website? To what degree did I know that they were familiar with it? To what degree were the questions that I had answered relayed to them? Or something about that one phase. I think Cheryl's idea before, during, after thing would be really helpful. I don't know, Jerry, if I cut you off or misunderstood your question.
I was getting more at that. I think that survey, it should be a little bit broader, because I think there are people who, we only hear from the 2 or 3 people directly involved, but they have department heads and they have people who they got involved in this process. And I'd like to know sometimes as well whether it was just these 3 people who did all the work, or whether the whole institution was brought into the process and learned and got all the benefits that the 2 or 3 people here say they got. And I'm interested in, was it just them, or did the whole institution benefit from this?
Well, number 3 on the institution says this information represents A, either the consensus of the institution, or B, the views of an individual at the institution, so that we get a sense of, okay, I'm answering on behalf of a group of us, kind of thing. So at least we get a little bit there. But we also haven't restricted it to anybody. So if an institution has, a 10-member accreditation team that, at a large institution or something, we haven't said only 2 people can do it. So, maybe we just need to think more systemically about it. But it has been helpful to us. It just, maybe the other thing we need to do also is there's portions of it that are confidential, that are just us trying to, we're not using this team member again or whatever. And then there's other things that are more broad that we need to make clear. This is going to go to the COA. We're going to summarize this information for processes and procedures and that kind of thing. So we can think about it that way too.
Okay, so we meet again in March. So if people have comments or additional thoughts, they send them directly to you by email, then maybe we could just come back and revisit this in March, and then maybe finish it by the end of April, you're hoping? Is that okay?
April or June.
Okay.
So I don't know if we can get to it in March, but we will.
A lot
try.
going on, yeah.
We will
yeah.
try. Okay. That's really literally 2 weeks from now when we have to have everything posted, because it's 4 weeks from now when the meeting.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So.
Well, any immediate additional, the conversation here is good. Any additional thoughts?
Really
I would
good.
just say you just go forward that to Cheryl.
Sure.
And then just kind of put it in the hopper for next time we have a chance to talk about it. Does that work? Okay.
And mostly because we're right in the middle of all our site visits, so people are a little already stretched.
You're knee deep. Yeah. Okay, thank you. We're now to public comment. Are there any member of the public that have anything wishes to say? All right, hearing none, having no further business, I adjourn the February 21st, 2020 meeting of the Committee on Accreditation. The next meeting of the committee will be on March 26th and 27th of 2020. Thank you all.